but at one point I just gravitated towards this little rat-like critter, and ever since about 2021 or so, I've been drawing her this way. Hello friends, and welcome back to another video. If you're new to my channel, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is River. I also go by Riv, and I enjoy drawing little critters and talking about random stuff on the internet, as you do. This speed drawing that I have going on features like this art challenge sort of thing that I saw over on Blue Sky. And it's like you're supposed to draw your original character as 6 different species of animal or whatever you want, I guess. So naturally I chose to draw my little Sona, or ratsona, whatever you want to call her. She is like this little rat creature, of course, and really her design is quite simple, probably compared to a lot of other people's that I've seen. But simple can be good. I like simple and I like purple, so she is also that. But yes, I figured maybe I could talk about her development and how I came about to drawing her the specific way that I do, and also about each of the different type of animal that I chose to draw her as and why, and what parts of her personality, and well, basically, I guess my own personality, that I feel like these different animals bring out. I did most of these drawings during my streams over on Twitch, which I try to do a couple times a week, just to sit myself down and work and catch up with friends, both of the in-person and online nature. Lately, I really haven't been out that much socially, I guess, so it's kind of become an easy way for me to connect with people without feeling like I'm bothering someone. It's like I'm the host, so people can either come hang out or not, and it's not too much pressure on anyone. Plus, I also feel pretty productive because usually I'm working on some art at the same time. I would like to make a whole other video one day about streaming as an artist on Twitch because it definitely has some learning curves to it, technologically and emotionally even. I'm not really that savvy with programs and computers. I just kind of have a vague idea of how to get what I want done. But it's always going to be a process, I guess, as most everything is. But there definitely have been some interesting times, and generally I've had really good experiences with live streaming on Twitch. So why is it so fun to have a little Sona like this, and why I would encourage, anyone to develop one and your own original characters? For me, I've always loved cartoons, and I basically learned to draw by looking at comics like Calvin and Hobbes in the Archie series, and I'd also pause movies like the 101 Dalmatians and Lilo and Stitch and try to redraw the characters. As kids, my sisters and I would watch a movie and then we get really obsessed with it, and then we'd want to have our own little fan characters that could fit into the universe. So I think having a little Sona like this also stems from that sort of creative thinking we had as kids. And I've heard of a lot of other people doing this too, which is really cute because it's like you want to be part of this world, but you also have a little leeway in your character's personality, its design, and from that I think it could connect you even more personally to that world. Now, my little rat Sona isn't necessarily a fan character for any one piece of media. I think visually she does have a lot of characteristics of newspaper comics and specifically the graphic novel series called Bone, but I'll be honest, I've only read a little bit of Bone, but one day I'll get around to reading it more. I do draw her in my own comics and stuff sometimes. She's more humanoid sometimes, and other times she's very animal-like, but she's always still pretty cartoony. I had drawn myself before, of course, and I always liked using these angular shapes, and I had also typically always drawn my hair the same way. But at one point, I just gravitated towards this little rat-like critter, and ever since about 2021 or so, I've been drawing her this way. But yeah, the comics that I've made with my little ratty are really just a reflection of my own world and my thoughts and experiences, the times I feel joy, the times I feel uncertainty and grief, and just all kinds of weird little stories and the people I know, and the people I meet, and how I like to represent them with little animals as well. Animals are just so fun to draw in general. I love cute little furry things, and I think part of it is also just like sometimes we may want to embrace the playful or softer or maybe even like, I don't know, darker side of us that ordinarily we may not be able to express in our daily lives. I'm pretty lucky. I don't necessarily feel like I have to quote unquote mask myself a lot at work or with people in general. But at the same time, I think a lot about how there are sort of these different versions of ourselves, right? And they serve very like specific purposes and roles in people's lives. And I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I think about it too much and it freaks me out a little bit. I guess it's just the fact that I exist or something. But anyway, no, I feel like I have really wonderful family and friends who love me and support my creative works. But even with that, I think when I draw my little rat Sona, it's still an outlet for me to tell a story and express something else about myself. So during my Twitch stream, I did let people make suggestions for the different animals, but I also picked a couple that I specifically wanted to do. For example, I'm pretty sure I wanted to draw a dragon for sure, or something sort of reptilian at least. And then a little later, I was also like, okay, I have to draw a kangaroo because for whatever reason, I've always loved kangaroos. So for the dragon, I felt like she turned out pretty curious and optimistic looking. I tried to draw her with a mix of Eastern and Western dragon features. For example, she still has a bit of fur, but she also has scales and horns instead of ears. I also used a slightly darker purple for this particular design, and some of the other designs too, just so that there would be more interesting colors and values going on. But I did specifically avoid using gold, yellow, or orange here, even though those colors do look really good with purple because it's like complementary or whatever. I just didn't want my dragon to look too much like Spyro, even though I do love him. You know, I was just trying to stick to my own color scheme. The capybara was a request from the stream. I drew her like holding up a pair of skates because that's also one of my hobbies. I was always pretty good at roller skating as a kid, but around 2022, I bought a really nice pair of skates. They are the Moxie Panthers, and I was really into skating for several months. I was basically doing it like every day for nearly like 2 hours each day, which I'll be honest was pretty rough on my feet. The brand and type of skate I have were like a freaking bitch to break in, and eventually they did, and now they feel really great. But yeah, it took like several weeks. I feel like I'm pretty okay. I can skate backwards and transition pretty well, do some small jumps, but nothing too crazy, you know. I'm not like trying to break any bones and be out of work or something. I haven't been skating so much outside recently just because it's been so hot. But yeah, eventually I'll probably pick it back up or head over to the indoor roller rink when I have some time off. But yeah, the capybara turned out pretty cute and she's pretty proud of those skates too. The next animal I chose to draw was this little vampire bat, and she's a little more shy looking, but she's also holding up the pen I used to draw with digitally on my tablet. I looked up a bunch of pictures of bats and all their different faces, and some were really crazy looking, which I absolutely love, but the vampire bat I felt like wasn't too far out there for me to still be able to draw as a cartoon. And I like that she has this like flat nose and really big ears, and for her wings I chose to draw them like attached to her arm instead of just on her back like how I did with the dragon. I've always drawn a lot, but I don't think I started doing digital art until I was in high school when computers and the internet became a little more accessible for me, I guess. Okay, now the kangaroo I think turned out really cool, and ever since I drew this, I've been drawing my Sona as a little kangaroo in some instances. I just feel like it also fits the playful, scrappier side of her personality. I can also experiment with different shapes and senses of weight and anatomy for her. Kangaroos have large legs and feet, and I really like to draw those things. I felt clever because I also drew her wearing this like little stripy hoodie that I have with this little pocket in the front, since, you know, kangaroos have pouches. But yeah, she's just wearing this little hoodie instead. The next animal I drew was this little anthro shark, and she seems pretty confident and happy, and she's resting a volleyball on her hip. In middle school and high school, I played a lot of volleyball, and even in college, I made friends through it, and I joined like leagues and tournaments with my friends. At one point, I even coached a little bit, even though that was a good experience for me. Once I got a full-time job, I decided that would be my last season. And last but not least, I drew a deer version of my Sona, and she also seems pretty shy and a little uncertain, or at least very thoughtful and aware of all the other surrounding animals. Where I live, there are a lot of deer and wildlife in general, so I've always kind of had a soft spot for these creatures. My ratsona usually has this long, thick, kind of chunky tail, but the deer version instead has a short, perky, fluffy tail, and I really do like that as well. I really like being able to draw different details of each animal's anatomy for this project. If anyone else decides they want to try it, I'd love to see what y'all come up with. The template was made up by someone that goes by Atburger, I think, but yeah, it was definitely a fun little challenge for me. So anyway, I guess another thing I wanted to talk about for a second is like kind of about making YouTube videos itself and some life stuff I've been dealing with recently. My sister had some health issues in the beginning of this year, and now my mom is also having some pretty major issues, without going into super detail on it, because I also just think like maybe I should respect my mom's privacy as well. But they did find a melanoma on her wrist and they had to remove it, which was a whole process over like several weeks. And probably by the time I publish this, she will have started immunotherapy. So our family is not really sure what to expect, and it's already scared her a lot, so I feel bad, you know. I just try to be there as much as I can, and I try to make it to all the appointments. But, you know, I understand there's no way you can't be kind of freaked out over something like this. But from what I understand, I think it can be managed. So for now, I've been staying pretty optimistic about the treatment. I also moved into a new home recently, which I'm planning to talk about more in depth in another video. But I just gotta think about like what kind of drawing would be relevant to have along with it. This channel is kind of like a digital diary in a ways for me. There are topics I want to talk about, partly because I think other people could relate and it could spark some discussion, but also because like part of me thinks like, well shit, I'm starting to forget some of this stuff and I want to capture a little bit of whatever it was I was feeling and thinking about. But of course, you know, I'm also trying to create artworks, and I don't necessarily want to create art for the sake of a YouTube video, if that makes sense. Like, I know it would still be art and it would still mean a lot to me, but personally, I don't want to be like, oh, YouTube video creation to be the main driving thing for my drawings. Like, I think I just like it when it just so happens that I have a topic and it meshes really well with the subject I'm drawing or something. Even if it's, you know, not totally related, that's okay. But yeah, I think that's just sort of what my thought process has been like with this channel. But it's also very likely I'm just kind of overthinking the whole thing. But with that being said, I think I can probably go ahead and start wrapping up the video here. Thanks for watching if you did. I hope y'all enjoyed me drawing and talking about all this random stuff, and I'm sure we'll talk again sometime. Until then, bye.